G'day from Western Australia after the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. In this video I'm going to tell you what every single driver drove to the track, and Valtteri Bottas's was funny. I've got to take my hat off to Valtteri Bottas. He knows how to have some fun, and I'll get to his car shortly. Let's start off with Red Bull Racing's two drivers, neither of them finishing in the top three this weekend, and that is a real rarity. But to the track, they drove these Ford Ranger Raptors, both orange in colour. And look at this huge Ford smacked right on the front bumper. They also had a third one of these running people in and out of the track, and they do that every single race with this fella, Cengiz, behind the wheel, and he's been with Red Bull as long as I've been in the sport. In Australia, we call the Ranger Raptor a ute. A utility vehicle. It's big, it's over 2 metres wide and taller than me, which can be a little bit of a drama in some shopping mall car parks which don't have high enough roofs. And if you want any other colour than white in Australia, you'll have to pay a premium. Let's go next to Aston Martin drivers. Lance Stroll, he's very consistent, yes, once again in a DBX, as was his teammate Fernando Alonso, both 707s, the souped up version. Now with Fernando, sometimes he will actually drive that car to and from the track, but have a second car for him to drive around the city or the towns, depending on where we are. But he does the right thing for the team by bringing that car into and out of the track. At this point, let me say that with me going to China shortly, I'm going to need a VPN, and my VPN, virtual private network of choice, is Surfshark. Surfshark is an app and a browser extension that allows me to log into things like Facebook, WhatsApp, different websites that sometimes aren't accessible in certain countries. But equally as important, it allows you to keep your online identity safe. How? By encrypting your data, protecting you from cyber criminals and big companies. You can also set up Surfshark so it can detect if your passwords are being hacked or used by other people. Now that can be a game changer for someone like me with so many social media accounts. When you log into Surfshark, you can pick virtually any country in the world to log in from, and that gets you past regional blocks. Going back a couple of weeks ago, I was overseas. I wanted to watch something on Kayo, the Australian streaming service. I logged in using Surfshark through Australia. I got to watch what I wanted. If you haven't got a VPN, you need one, and Surfshark is now offering 3 extra months absolutely free. Enter the promo code KIM when you click on the link in the description below. You won't be disappointed. Thank you, Surfshark. Esteban Ocon, what was that young man driving to the track? He was driving a Renault Megane E-Tech. And while some of the drivers parked in the driver's car park, which is pretty close to the Melbourne Walk, some got dropped off right up next to the swipe gates at one end, while others went to the far end and virtually avoided seeing any fans. Esteban did that on the Friday. Teammate Pierre Gasly also was in that same car. The Renault Megane E-Tech is a 100% electric vehicle, does 0 to 100 in 7.4 seconds. When I look at electric vehicles, I'm expecting them to go like rockets off the line, but no, that is, well, that's more comfy rather than like a rocket. But it looked okay, and no complaints from the drivers. Now, there were a lot of people who lined up on the road into the track during the mornings just to get a glimpse of their favourite driver. And the road that they take, and there is only one entry in to Albert Park, is from Canterbury Road. They then pass underneath the track and continue turning right until they get to the driver's car park. Now, we used to have parking just behind the driver's car park, which is very close to the Melbourne Walk. But this year we got shunted to the other side over on the golf course, and that meant a walk of probably some 500-600 metres across a bridge with heavy equipment and across the lake on this floating bridge. But it avoided us having to take public transport, which after quali and the race was apparently a nightmare. All those people, and there were a lot of them, well over 140,000 on both days, trying to get out of probably only a few entrances. Charles Leclerc was in an Alfa Romeo Tonale, which is a mid-sized SUV. The Tonale sells for between 51 grand Aussie to 78,000 in US dollars, around 35,000 to 50,000. And yes, it would have been lovely to see those drivers roll up in a Ferrari, but it's quite a dusty drive into the track. And the car park is pretty much just on some lawn. So maybe not typical Ferrari conditions. Let's go to the V-Car boys. Daniel Ricciardo, a local hero. Last year, we saw him in a Ford out the front doing some ads. Well, actually, he did do some ads for Fords dressed up in a Red Bull racing suit throughout the race weekend, as did Liam Lawson. But what were they driving? Not Fords. They were in Honda Civic Type Rs. And I'll take a punt and say they'll both be driving Type Rs, if not NSXs, in Japan come next race. And not only were they the same models, they were exactly the same colour. The Haas boys had an upgrade from last year's cars. Last year they were in Audi Q5s. This year they upgraded to Q7s, a silver one for Kevin and a blue for Nico. And what a lovely thing it was for both of those drivers to score points in Australia. As I mentioned in my last video, I had them down to finish last, but I think now Alpine's going to have that honour. Were there any more electric vehicles? Yes. Mercedes. Lewis in a Mercedes EQE 53, silver in colour and the exact same colour in car for George Russell. And Lewis, I was impressed by him doing the Melbourne Walk on at least 3 days, and he may have well done it on the final day. I didn't see him come in. And are there any other tracks that have anything like the Melbourne Walk? No. Austria does have something similar with the green carpet, but it's not quite the size and it doesn't have the reputation as the Melbourne Walk. Oh, and I should say that there are some upgrade plans planned for the Melbourne Paddock for next year, which will be great because at the moment there's probably some limitations on it, and I think we'll look forward to something new and exciting in 2025. Now, Valtteri Bottas, I said, had the most interesting car. I want you to have a look at this.
I love the fashion. I love the food. But mainly, I like to drive here.
That's a new ad he's done for Uber, but he's also carried over that branding to the car he drove into the track. He was driving an Audi Q8, but he had Uber partnership stickers on the side and even a Valtteri Bottas head car freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. Now, there's no doubt that Valtteri has certainly softened up and he's now happy to have a whole lot of fun with stuff like this. And I think that's what has really endeared him to, well, not only Australians, but particularly Australians, but certainly around the world. And he actually gave me one of his bucket hats, and I have one for him. These are some new bucket hats that, this is my prototype, but it, along with the blue one, will be available at some point. Keep a lookout for them. And his teammate, an Audi RS7. Couple to go, so let's go to Williams now. Alex Albon in this Audi Q5, silver in colour, possibly the exact same car as he used last year, because that's what he drove in 2023. Logan Sargent also had an Audi Q5. Now, of course, he came in a lot later than normal on Saturday and Sunday, given that he didn't have to do any driving, and he was pretty relaxed. I have no doubt disappointed he wasn't going to be driving, but that didn't show in his behaviour. And looking through my list here, I think, yes, we only have the McLarens. And were they driving 720Ss? No. They weren't driving Speedtails either. They were in something a little bit more urban. A Ford Everest for Lando. And on a couple of days, Lando's dad, Adam, rolled up with him, went to the back of the car, grabbed a couple of scooters.
Scooter! Scooter!
And it looks like he's done a collaboration with McLaren. And the size of that rear trunk on the Ford Everest made it possible for Adam to get at least two of those scooters into the rear.
Scooter!
I think we only have one driver left now. Audi Q5 for Oscar Piastri. He walked from the car park on the first day, which gave us a little bit more time to photograph him, and I was surprised to see him wearing a Richmond footy jumper. Now, Australians will know all about that, but Americans and people from Europe, this is Australian football. Some of you would never have seen it, have no idea about it, but it's our national sport and draws huge crowds, particularly at the MCG, where on Grand Final Day we'll see over 100,000 people pile into that stadium for the premier game of the year. Oh, and still on the subject of Oscar, I notice now not only does he have a security guard at every race, he also has his brand manager and a new social media content creator. So the Oscar Piastri brand is growing rapidly. And before I go, let me tell you what a few of the team principals were driving. Zach Brown driving one of his competitors' car, a Mercedes V-Class. Fred Vasseur in an Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio, the fast one. A couple of Audis, Alessandro Bravi driving an S3 and James Vowles in a Q7. Laurent Mekies in a Honda ZR-V. And finally, Bruno Famin in a Land Rover Range Rover. You now know what every driver drove to the Australian Grand Prix, and I hope that you will now do me one favour and subscribe for the 50% of you watching that haven't done so yet. And please hit the like button. You'll find a whole host of my content here, along with merchandise, and very shortly, yes, you will see these hats for sale. My sincere thanks for watching, and I urge you to stay passionate. A couple of...
Scooter!